One.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Chris and Dan show. We have special guest today, Kirk. Kirk specializes in restaurant and business in some capacity. Can you give us a rundown on how that works, Kirk?
Sure, sure. Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, I own a company called Profit Cookers, and what we do is we own 30 virtual restaurant brands that we build into a business model, and we license those brands to local restaurants throughout the communities across the United States to make our food, and we market the brands on Uber, DoorDash, and Grubhub for delivery only. So consumers place their orders online with our brands. The orders route to the restaurant that is best served for that delivery zone, and the restaurant makes the food, and we compensate the restaurants for making our food.
Wow.
Oh, interesting.
It's like a
So,
B2B business with the C as the ultimate end user.
Yeah, it's we're involved with all of them. So
Ah,
it's in some capacity, it sounds similar to Schwann's. I don't know if you're familiar with Schwann's or not, but
yeah,
it's similar, right? Though you're using restaurants opposed to Schwann's just making the food themselves.
yeah. So there's a few different models out there, and when you look at them, actually, if you look back at the way KFC started, um, what the Colonel did was he brought his recipe to restaurants, had them make it, and they paid him a percentage of the sales that they made with his recipe. This model is a little bit different in that we own the brands, we own the channel, and the restaurant serves as the fulfillment partner within that channel.
I see. So the customer knows, does the customers think they're ordering from the restaurant or they think they're ordering from you? They don't know which restaurant made it.
Yeah, it does. Well, they can look it up easily
Hmm.
by looking at addresses, but basically, it's always commercial kitchens. So it's always a restaurant commercial kitchen that provides the services. In our case, it's always a local restaurant. We only work with
Interesting.
locally owners, and then it allows them to expand their presence online. It allows them to get more use of their kitchens and their staff, because as a restaurant, once you have your fixed costs in place, it's about sales, right? So you got
Yeah.
to get incremental sales. So we bring a model that can be dropped in to the restaurant. It doesn't affect the front end or their brand itself that they're marketing for people to come into their restaurant. And the kitchen just performs the cooking of multiple different restaurant brands. So everything from pancakes to chicken wings to pastas, depending on what they are. There are recipes, so it's made to our standards, and then the consumer chooses to pick those brands. So it gives the
Wow.
restaurant, if you think about it, the restaurant right now has one brand, most likely, running out of their restaurant, and they're hoping consumers come to their restaurant. So then they went and online, and now customers can order online from them. And now we add up to 30 brands to a restaurant that now are online. And every time someone orders from within that 5 mile radius, that restaurant gets the order to fulfill.
Very cool.
It is. I'm curious though, do you offer no restaurant? In other words, you're individualizing the components of the recipe and providing the instructions to the user where they can do it at home, or no? It's
No, no,
strictly
no. This is all like, so our brands sit on Uber, DoorDash, and Grubhub, right? They look just like a regular restaurant would
okay,
on the app.
got it.
So what it'll say on there, it might say that this is a virtual brand, is what it'll say. And then what people do is they look at the menus, they see if there's something they like, they place the order, and then the system routes it. So it's all finished food that
Mhm.
shows up at the consumer.
Yeah, that's an interesting business model. Is this something relatively, I mean, you said Colonel Sanders, but this particular model using the rails already established by Uber Eats and DoorDash, is this a relatively new model?
Yeah, we started this 4 years ago, just before
Wow.
COVID, and then COVID
Oh,
happened, and
perfect timing.
yeah, a lot of luck. Sometimes there's luck involved, right?
Oh,
Better
absolutely.
to be lucky than good sometimes. And that was the infancy stages when we started it. But we learned a lot through that process and everything. And now it's become mainstream. So restaurants today, if they're not doing a virtual brand, they're missing out on a whole piece of the business market. What the virtual brands allow also is, picture a restaurant, they have a menu, right? So our virtual brands like Badass BLTs is a brand. There's 9 different BLTs to choose from, right? That a consumer can choose from. A restaurant's not going to have 9 BLTs on their menu unless they are a BLT restaurant. And there are no BLT restaurants. There's Subway and they have a BLT, or there's other restaurants that have a BLT on their menu. And a diner can make all the different BLTs. It's just that to put it on a menu, you take up way too much space. So
Mhm.
they wouldn't do that. So what this allows is people that are more looking online for a specific type of food can find it fast, can find different options and place that order, and then the local restaurant makes it for them.
And the
So,
restaurant does it for, like you said, cash flow. It's more predictable for them. They can just take this work and there's no
Yeah, I mean,
customer really to
it's
serve.
all about the ingredients. So every restaurant has a lot of different ingredients in it. So we design the brands around the ingredients that are most common in restaurants. And then we go to those restaurants and ask those owners, would you like to be a fulfillment partner for us? This is how much we bring in. In our average restaurant, we bring in about $300,000 a year in business too. So it's pretty substantial.
mm.
And then we also guarantee the profit margin for those restaurants. So we guarantee that they're going to make 30% on that $300,000 in sales.
So this may be a dumb question, as I have never used Grubhub or any of these food delivery services.
Mhm.
Um, so bear with me here. Let's say I use your service and for whatever reason I have a complaint. It was made incorrectly. I got the wrong order. I don't care for the taste. Am I complaining to you or the restaurant? And then how's
No,
that handled?
yeah, you actually complain to DoorDash because or Grubhub or Uber because they actually perform the sale. You
Oh,
order through them, and this is with even a restaurant. If you ordered from a restaurant that you knew where it is, you would still everything flows through who you pay. So the consumers have gotten used to making that complaint. DoorDash will issue a credit, or the third party delivery company will send a note off to us saying that this was a missing item. They are on the side of the consumer to make sure. Now, it is a little bit more of a complex system of getting orders then delivered again. So if there was something missing, usually DoorDash has to replace an order to the restaurant to have them do it because you can't go outside that process. Otherwise, it gets messy.
mm.
So it'll be like, we canceled this order, we're placing a new order. The driver will be there to pick it up, make sure it's correct. So that's kind of how it's handled.
It's a good business model because your brand, your business, Kirk, and the restaurant probably would benefit off of a double order in those cases.
You know, it just depends on the credits that go back. The main thing is you want to make sure the customer gets taken care of, right? You want to
Yeah.
make sure their food shows up properly. You want to make sure all that. It's not a perfect system, but when you think about all the touch points throughout the system, from where the consumer orders from online to all the way down to the driver picking it up and then delivering it to the consumer, the amount of errors are less than 2% in the business. So it's a very, with all the touch points, it's pretty amazing how well it works.
Absolutely. I worked at Domino's Pizza for a number of years when I was younger, and there was much more than 2% mistakes, let me tell you.
Well, and I think we see less than 2%, but I think that may be also because we go to local restaurants that where the owners are involved in the business. So I think that there's a little bit more caring that goes on, and understanding that what they put out is impactful upon how much more business will come in,
Mhm.
as opposed to maybe going to a chain restaurant that maybe hires managers that aren't really having the same financial impact to them as it would to an owner.
Yeah, and there's probably an audit trail. I mean, what reduced the errors is probably the audit trail from everything's documented from the order, every detail, as opposed to back in the day, it was somebody on a telephone writing things down with a crayon, you know, and then
Yeah,
they gave the
and
order.
and part of it is too, like we learned from the beginning. So, when you start a business, there's always things that you find out that are work well and some things that don't, and then you make the adjustments, right? And
Mhm.
that's standard, continuous improvement is standard throughout the industries that we all work within. So what we found is that we had to tighten up the menus. So make less points of error possibility by the consumer, make it simplify the process as much as possible so that it's a click, 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 and they know what they're getting every time they order. So for what we do in our menus online is we make everything have to be ordered. So even if you want, ketchup, you have to press the button that put ketchup with it, right? If you want napkins and utensils, there's a button to press for that. So that you know exactly what you're getting. And then the restaurant also knows exactly what they're supposed to put in there. So if the consumer didn't choose it, you don't put it in. And
Right.
that tends to eliminate the number of errors that are out there.
Right. And then
that
if
can
it
occur.
ends up being user error, the customer can see that they did it wrong themselves.
Right.
The proof
And
is
even
right
if it's
there.
user error, we still want to help them,
Sure.
uh, alleviate that issue. But we can also see, okay, how many times does this happen? Is this a common thing? We need to make a change, right?
Yeah,
We need to fix something because everybody keeps ordering it the same way and it keeps being an error.
sure. How did you get started in this? Like what?
I was in the restaurant business. I owned a restaurant in Plainfield, Illinois,
Wow.
and I started doing virtual brands out of my own restaurant. And I realized, okay, there's an opportunity here
Wait,
for.
but how'd you get that idea? Virtual brand, because that's so foreign of a concept. Like,
Yeah,
how did you
there were
get
some
that?
companies out there that were kind of creating this idea of virtual brands. And then restaurants started going to Grubhub and Uber and saying, hey, I'm going to create another brand that I want to run out of my kitchen. And they were
Ah,
allowing it. So I said, well, why can't we do this on a bigger level? And then we spent a lot of time trying to massage the model so that it could be very simple, it could be simplified, it could be licensed to restaurants to be fulfillment partners of the food, and then be able to take that model and drop it in to the business. So it doesn't affect anything else in your business. It just has your kitchen more productive, right? And when you think about how much money you spend in a restaurant on your back end employees, the only way you get a return on that investment of those people in the back is to produce more revenue at a profit. Very important to produce that revenue at a profit too, right?
sure, sure.
So we designed the model so that it's profitable because the pricing models are different online than they are in restaurant. Understanding that difference, pricing it, and then bringing the orders. So if we can bring, I'll give you an example. In order to do, $1,000 a day in sales, right? You have to do 3 orders an hour for the average restaurant online. It's not very much
Right.
when you break it down. That's 3 orders an hour. Now,
But to be
in a kitchen,
consistent is tough. That's the tough part.
right? But that's where online helps,
I
right?
see.
Because now you'll get some hours that are 6 orders and you'll get some hours that are 2 orders, but you're going to try to average out and get 30 orders a day to bring in $1,000 in revenue, right? That $1,000, it makes a huge difference in your P&L. At the end of the day, your profitability of your restaurant goes up dramatically because on that $1,000 in sales, 300 of it is guaranteed to be profit. Most of the time, it's more than that, right? But let's say it's 300 just for easy numbers. So you put $300 a day in profit times 360 days. It adds a lot of profit to your business, and you're doing that with the same employees you currently have. So when a restaurant tells me they're too busy, I'm like, seriously? Like, there's
This
no way you can be
sounds
too busy. Like, your cooks can make 3 orders an hour.
the parallels between this and running a research clinic, which is what we have. It's a very obscure thing. But there we have like fixed cost too, and sometimes patients don't show up, and it's like coordinate the staff just sitting there, right? There's no revenue generated. So in this case, it would be like a blood draw study. Somebody has a patient and a simple study, and they say, "Hey, Chris, you want like $200?" Just they'll come in and do a blood draw, and then they'll leave. Everybody's gonna say, yeah, we don't have any patients here today, like of course. So this is very similar to
Yeah.
this, which is not possible in our industry, but in restaurants it is. So I always like to draw parallels between,
Well, the really nice part for the restaurant is that they just fulfill the food. They
yeah,
don't have to do any of the marketing. They don't have to bring the orders in. They don't have to do any of that. They're not even involved in any of that.
right.
We take care of all of that, and they just get to make the food, which is when you're in a business, what's the best thing you can do? The thing that you do best,
Your core
right?
competency.
Your core
Yep.
competency is what you want to be doing all the
hmm
time because that's
hmm
going to be your most profitable point.
Yeah.
Again,
So
the reason why it works is the model is designed to be profitable for the restaurant.
Yeah.
And they get the lion's share because they're doing the most important part of the work.
At its most distilled, its lowest common denominator, a restaurant is in the business of making food. Everything else is layers on top of that core competency.
Yes, which is very difficult for restaurants to execute
hmm
is the other parts of it. It's great if you have a restaurant that people are walking into all the time, right?
Yeah.
But what if you have to market to bring people into your restaurant?
Yeah.
So now here's an interesting thing I'm going to tell you guys about. So we start this business, we get some restaurants, and we get a restaurant that's in a pretty obscure part of Lawrenceville, Georgia. Small town outside of Atlanta, about an hour outside. And the restaurant wants to come on board and they have a location that's in an industrial and it faces into the industrial park. So even the road, you can't even see the restaurant.
Nice.
Now, you look at that restaurant and say, well, with our model, doesn't really matter because the consumers aren't coming to the restaurant. They place an order online and only drivers are coming to the restaurant to pick up the food and deliver it to them. But what ended up happening was we were sending 400 drivers a week into this restaurant to pick up food. Their internal business doubled for their actual restaurant after 2 months of performing the fulfillment of our orders. Because 400 of those drivers that were coming every week live in the community. They didn't know they didn't know where this restaurant was.
I see.
Now they do. And guess what? The restaurant owners treated these people nice. When they came in, they gave them something to eat, let them use their bathroom, stuff like that. Next thing you know,
Interesting.
they were all these drivers were coming in with their families on Saturday and Sunday to have breakfast.
It's brilliant, actually. And the drivers feel like, hey, I'm going to show my family and friends something cool
Yep.
because it's the inside perk of what I do.
And no one even knows about it.
Exactly.
So what would it have cost that restaurant? So that restaurant got all this extra business by performing, getting more business.
Drivers need to
cost
eat
them a
too.
nickel to market.
We forget drivers eat. Drivers buy food as well.
And they live in the community. They don't come from outside. They're your neighbors. They're the people down the street that are in this gig economy.
Brilliant,
right?
brilliant.
And so the restaurant owners, it's one of the things that we didn't even think about when this occurred, but now we track it. We track when the restaurants start with us.
Wow.
And then, okay, how much more business did they get internally? And I
Yeah.
harp on them all the time. Offer the driver a drink. You believe me, they are your customers. They're your community. They're going to be the word of mouth.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant.
Because how many restaurants in your community have you driven by and never been in?
Most of them.
Yep, that's my
Well,
point. So think about it.
It's not possible, at least in Southern California, Dan, to go to all the different restaurants here. I mean, you have to
Exactly.
eat out 3 times a day, every day for a year, and you still wouldn't go to
You
them all.
still only got like 10%. Exactly.
But how many have you driven by for the last 10 years and never been in?
Most of them.
Yeah, I mean it's so if all of a sudden one of your friends was driving and says, "Hey, this guy's a super nice guy over here. You got to see their food in this place." You might stop in.
Yeah. Especially if you hear it from a professional Uber driver who does this for a living and he tells you something, it means it's an outlier.
Yes. And that's kind of what you look for, right? You're looking for,
Because it can work the other way too. It could work the other way too, because I know some Uber Eats drivers and they're like, oh, I would never order from that place. I pick up from there a lot. I would never order from there personally.
Well, and that's why we harp on our owners and well, for the most part, we deal with locally owned restaurants. So we let the owners know, hey, be cordial, really work with these drivers because they're going to bring you in a lot more business than you can believe.
You're going to get to the point where the restaurant's going to tip the drivers too.
Yeah.
Serious. If it's not already happening.
They give them drinks.
Yeah.
Drivers out there working all day needs to use the bathroom.
Yeah.
Like, there's all kinds of things that and they stop in and, offer them half off a meal when they come in and, when they're working and they'll come in and they'll eat at your place and they'll be at your place more. There's so many things and what it would cost a restaurant to get that type of advertising. They have no idea that would cost them thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yes. Now you got me thinking, how many of these, because Uber and DoorDash and all these created the rails, basically the infrastructure for like a new type of business. And this is where we always debate. We don't realize how technology is going to change industries until we see it, because there's unintended consequences that you don't think about, you don't plan. Now there's potentially a new subset of this economy where you're serving the drivers somehow. And the drivers become a key part of this whole ecosystem. And they're still currently part of the Uber infrastructure. But if they ever get decentralized on their own, or somebody figures out a way, they just become like marketing on wheels, like formally, not informally, but formally.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, if you think like what we do is with our brands too, we tell the restaurants, hey, every time they're delivering food, put one of your menus in the bag. Like, I mean, it's a chance to advertise to people that may not have known your brand, but they found ours.
Seriously.
And
Chris, you want to open a restaurant now, huh?
Not particularly. You could also have them put magnets on their cars, like the large ones. for advertising as well. But I'm curious. I'm still not clear on exactly the process here. So I go to Uber Eats, I make an order,
right?
you get the order, your location, you provide the ingredients to the restaurant. So
No,
no.
no, the restaurants provide everything.
So, but you said it's proprietary, right? You have recipes and everything. Do they already have the recipes, or Uber Eats gives them the
Yeah.
recipes, or
No,
how's
they
that
have
work?
the restaurant has the recipes. They've been trained on how to make the food.
Okay, so they have all the recipes for everything that you may send their way.
Right.
Oh, I see.
They
Okay.
So
probably
when they
And it's
signed a
receive the
with
order,
and
CDA,
it's
right?
with their ingredients that they're preparing these items.
correct.
And they
Yeah.
probably signed a CDA so they can't steal that item and put it for themselves.
So
I'm
do you have
guessing.
like special sauces or anything?
We do. We have some things that we add to different items that would
So do
be,
you provide that to all the restaurants? They
we
have that
provide
on
them the recipe
standby?
on how to make it.
Oh, I see. So they make it individually
Yeah. Mhm.
themselves. I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything. See, so everything that we sell is all fresh made food.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not fast food. It's all fast cooked food. So we provide the restaurants with items that take 8 minutes or less
Mhm.
to cook
Mhm.
from scratch.
Sure.
So it's very simple for them, and people order what people like to order online are things that they're very comfortable with, right? So in the breakfast side, they order a lot of bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches, a lot of
Mhm.
pancakes, French toast.
Sure.
On the dinner side and lunch side, there's a lot of BLTs, grilled cheeses, mac and
Oh,
cheese,
give me that grilled
pastas.
cheese all day long.
Pastas, cheesesteaks, you name it. And picture your diner. Chris, are you from New York? Okay,
He's
but
just
in
a
New York City,
bandwagon
there's a lot
Yankee
of
fan.
diners, right?
Sure. I've been to New York. That's
A lot of
why
24-hour
the hat.
diners.
Yeah.
A lot of 24-hour diners. So with the 24-hour diners, you can pretty much get anything. And that's what these brands are designed to be for the market. So on top of it being um, restaurants of their own that sit online, there are also new culinary options
Mhm.
that you wouldn't find online as much,
That's
more
brilliant.
specific to the type of food.
It's
Mhm.
brilliant. How did private equity not get involved in this yet? Or are they?
We're gonna be looking at that in the next month or so.
Are you going to a day with Shore in Chicago?
He's like, what the hell are you talking about, Dan?
Are you in
PE is after
Chicago?
it. No, we will be next month though for
Oh,
private equity related thing for our industry. But the guys I talked to from that space from PE say every vertical in every industry is up for sale, and these guys mean it too. So
yeah.
they're talking nail salon, medical clinics, research clinics. This sounds like something right up their alley.
Yeah, we're expecting to get a lot of interest in the next 2 months.
How many people are doing like what you do, would you estimate in the
There's a
country?
few companies out there. There were a lot more 3 years ago. They put some DoorDash, Uber, and Grubhub had to like get together and kind of put some rules around the business models because it was anybody could do anything.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And
Wouldn't it make sense for them, Grubhub? If I were Uber Eats, Grubhub, DoorDash, I'd be trying to buy some of these kind of companies.
well, they haven't done that yet, and I think one of the reasons is that our companies we deal with all three delivery platforms.
I see.
So if they bought one, they may get cut off of being on the other platforms.
Right.
So, I'm not sure how it's all going to play out in the end.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Are you familiar with Mr. Beast? Mr. Beast?
Yeah, of course. Beastables
Okay.
and all that. Yeah.
So Mr. Beast has a brand called Beast Burger
Yep. Yep.
that he started. But he started it through a company called Virtual Dining Concepts, which is owned by the Robert Earl Enterprises Group, which owns tons of restaurants, and they own Planet Hollywood, that type of
Do you
thing.
know the nature of their arrangement by any chance? Like Beast
Uh,
and them?
I think it's just a licensing agreement with him.
Okay.
I know there's a lawsuit going on between the parties now because of a quality control issue with his name on it that he believes they didn't fulfill, and that kind of thing.
Okay.
But what we're trying to figure out is that grew to a huge business for them because of Mr. Beast's YouTube
Of
popularity.
course. Yeah.
We don't use celebrities. They use celebrities in their branding. Same type of business, but they use celebrities, and they own a lot of the restaurants that perform the fulfillment.
Okay.
we go to independently owned restaurants. We have brands that we've built from the ground up, a little bit different, and but we've grown pretty quick over the last 3 years. So
Congrats, man. That's really good.
yeah, we're pretty happy where we're at, and now we're going to go out to the market and see, about expanding it more, what we can do, what's the smart things to do.
So at this point, your day-to-day, if I may assume, is reducing variability amongst restaurants for your brands and motivating people, finding talent, right? Is there anything else I'm missing?
We're actually
adding locations plays
our main thing is adding
one.
locations.
So sales.
Yeah, just
Are
adding
you-
restaurants to our group.
Are you actively working in the business or on the business or half and half or
Oh no, I do it full time.
so you're working in and on the business?
Oh yeah.
I see.
Well, I can only imagine that this is an extensive process. These restaurants have not heard of this. You have to explain the business to them, how it can be incorporated, how easily it's done, all of the different ins and outs. I mean, it's like
Shit.
it's like explaining to a research naive physician who has
Yeah.
never heard of research, has
Well-
no clue about it, has never even considered it. Now you got to step in and start from there. That's what
Well, the good part is we've done all the hard work like that, and now a lot of restaurants have heard of the process, the type of business it is. So it's not as in the beginning it was very difficult. It's gotten much easier to get the attention of the restaurant owners now. The other thing is we have such a network of restaurants across the country now. We're in 26 states that those restaurant owners, the amount of business we get organically is amazing. Like they have friends that own restaurants, they have relatives that own restaurants, they have success, they pass it on to them, and then they want to be a part of it. So, which is great.
CRA Academy, Dan.
Yeah, and it's fun to watch, but still, I'll give you an idea. There's 100,000 restaurants that meet the criteria that we need in the country. We have a couple of hundred.
So you haven't even started like scratching the surface yet.
Oh God, no! It's the amount of the cash flow in this business is amazing.
Were you always an entrepreneur or did you learn to become one?
My dad was an entrepreneur, so I always had that entrepreneurial spirit. I worked for a couple of big companies and then really wanted to do my own thing. And when this came along, it was like, I think I found what I want to do.
So I'm kind of a personal question, but was your initial brick and mortar restaurant successful?
Actually, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Like most, right? Like most
Yeah.
restaurants.
Well, I was my brick and mortar restaurant that I personally started, where it wasn't with another group or anything. That was it wasn't successful. Now, fortunately, I was able to exit that business in January of 2020, and COVID happened in March.
Wow.
Yeah. You can't get better timing
Better
to
timing.
start this
So
new business.
sometimes you always wonder, like, is someone looking out for you?
Could have been, man. I mean, I'm sure you could have found a way with all those money they were like helicoptering down to people, but you'd have to pay it back at some.
That's what I mean. It still wouldn't have been
Yeah.
a
Not
great
only
thing.
that, but the business he created was perfect for the time.
Right.
Yeah, it
Right.
really worked out well.
And do you think without your failed restaurant that you would have been able to be as successful in the new business?
No,
So it
absolutely.
helped. It contributed to the
Well,
success.
one of the things is because we weren't doing as well as I wanted to, I was looking for other avenues of revenue.
Yeah.
And,
So
and
I
this
went
certainly
into
makes
that and
you
then realized.
sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say this certainly makes you more relatable to restaurant owners when you have a conversation with them.
Oh,
There you
well,
go.
you know what? I mean, most of our competitors are technology companies. Never owned restaurants, never understood.
No, I'm speaking those specific to the restaurants when you first started out.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I know you're struggling. This is how I'm going to improve your situation. We can work together on
Well,
this.
it was funny because a lot initially didn't want to have anything to do with it. And then once COVID happened, I was getting phone calls.
Yeah,
What's that
absolutely.
thing you were talking about? And so this is how it works. And then during COVID,
Yes.
that was their lifeline. That's all they had was us.
Sure.
There's a value in like being the person you are selling to, because there's that narrative of I'm scratching my own itch. And that if in your case it's true, you did this out of necessity for your
Yeah.
failing restaurant, right? And you can catch these other restaurant owners before it's too late for them with this and turn around their
Well,
business.
the biggest thing was what happened was, COVID created a habit. You had no choice but to order through the apps and online to get what you wanted during COVID if you live
Well,
in states that were locking you down, right?
so I do have I want to make a correction there. You have a choice, you just don't get to eat out,
Yeah,
right?
well, yeah, true, true.
Get to eat
So,
at home.
so what happened was it created this habit of people using these things, and what it became, so it went from habit to convenience when COVID
Mm.
ended. And we thought, I thought especially that, business is going to drop off. And it actually got busier because
Oh,
people went
absolutely.
back to their busy lives. And
Yep.
now it became convenience.
Yep.
If so picture this. We have a store in Georgia that does about 25 brands for us. We see the orders that come in regularly. And at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday, all of a sudden we might get orders from three different orders from three different brands all going to the same ad. We wonder why is that? Well, you make a phone call and you find out from the owner because I'm always curious to know. So sometimes I'll call the consumer and ask. Well, they were on their family. Mom was on the way back with their two kids playing basketball from basketball practice, and the kids she didn't have time to make any food, so everybody ordered what they wanted. They just happened to pick three of the brands that we have.
I see.
And
Interesting.
now they may have ordered more. There might have been more kids, but these three particular orders came from.
Right.
So
Wow, that's cool.
culinary options matter, right? Because
Yes.
now the other thing is for the restaurant, if you're a consumer, you might see Joe's Diner, right? And you might order from Joe's Diner once a week, but you might then look and say, oh, I'd like a cheesesteak. And you see Rocky's cheesesteak, so you place an order. Well, Joe's Diner would have never gotten the Rocky's cheesesteaks order, but now he does. So now he got you order twice, and both orders came from your restaurant where you'd have only gotten one order.
Right. So it creates a bigger pie in a sense, giving more options, creates a bigger pie. The only issue is like when more competitors come in, the take rates eventually go down because I feel technology is a deflationary force. So you're probably in the sweet spot right now until, I mean, new market forces take over, which happens everywhere.
There's always new brands and new
Yeah.
things that are coming out. The nice part is we have that same ability though.
You have exactly, and that's your
So-
role is to be
So
ahead of it.
here's where the power of the business. So we have a couple of hundred restaurants, and Dan, you come to me and you're a chef. You say, I have this really cool brand I'm creating. How can I get this to market? Well, you come to me and I say, well, let's look at the brand. Let's build it out to be a delivery only brand in a way. And I can get you into 200 stores in 2 weeks. You could be selling your food across the country in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
There's no model in the world
No.
that can do that.
And so that's next. Do you think that's next?
We're doing it now.
Like, so chefs, specifically chefs.
Yeah, we have people that have made brands for us. We license the
I
brand
see.
from them. We pay them a royalty on that brand, and we
I
go out to
see.
our restaurant partners and say, "Here's one of our new brands," and we can get it into every restaurant within. Not every restaurant can take it. Depends on what their capabilities are,
Right.
but in most cases, they can all do it.
And then your job is to make sure the brand's viable, and good.
So what we do is we make sure that I make sure that the brand.
Who eats all
I-
this new stuff? Are you eating it all, or is someone testing this stuff?
Oh yeah, it's all tested. Mhm. It's tested on how well it travels.
Man, I'd be gaining weight
Tested for
doing this.
flavor. We take it to different college kids sometimes and have them taste. Like the latest brand
Okay.
we had was American Burrito. So American Burrito is a hot burrito brand that is not Mexican. It's all American food. So it's a cheeseburger burrito, a bacon cheeseburger burrito, a chicken
Whoa.
Parmesan burrito, a buffalo chicken burrito, a teriyaki chicken burrito.
I had one of those recently, buffalo chicken. I go there to this restaurant specifically for that. It's
Yeah.
like that sounds good.
Hey, popular
I
item.
never
convince them
had it
about Kirk.
before.
Why don't you tell them next time about Kirk? Tell them to watch the podcast and hit them up.
Do you have
this is-
a restaurant in Southern California?
We've got a couple there, but we're located where?
Well, Corona, California, though you probably don't know
Corona,
where it
we don't.
is. Oh, you do know where it is. So, okay. Well, I'm SOL, Dan. So I know you mentioned, Dan, that technology is deflationary. I think in this instance and most instances, it's competition is more deflationary than tech. So do you have competition local to you? And additionally, I would think you also can only onboard so many restaurants because they would compete with one another. No?
Yeah, so we give a restaurant a dedicated territory. So each restaurant gets a minimum of 3 miles, unless they're in a high metropolitan area like New York City, where it'll be about 1 mile. So that restaurant gets all the orders from that distance. Consumers still have the choice to order from restaurants, even if it's further away, as long as the delivery service will go there. But from a standpoint of putting another restaurant that's making the same brand, we only allow one restaurant within the territory. That being said, one of the biggest things that happen is that the quality control stays well with that. So people that order from that 3 miles are always getting it from that restaurant. So the quality control stays consistent.
So I could see though where you may make exceptions. This is probably not the case, or at least as of yet. But suppose you wanted to have specialized restaurants, right? Like I want some sort of Asian food restaurant. Your
Yes.
typical diner is not going to be able to do that. It's fine if they're in the same vicinity in that case.
Yeah,
right?
as long as they're not doing the same brands.
Right.
That's
Okay.
that's the criteria. So the same brand can't be being sold basically at the same time too. So
Mhm.
for instance, technically we could have a breakfast lunch concept that runs from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then another restaurant that runs from 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. Right?
Yeah.
You technically could have that. We don't have that yet. We haven't gotten to that size to even worry about
Right.
that
Right.
at this point. But there's too many other opportunities out there. But that's the best way for those restaurants. And that gives the restaurant owner the confidence that he's going to get a lot of orders. That also
So,
helps us manage less.
so Dan and I are going to start this concept. How do we put you out of business?
How do you put me out of business?
Hmm.
It'd be virtually impossible to put me out of business.
Well, you got to think in those terms, right?
Yeah.
Where am I
But
lacking?
yeah, but
Think
it
of
would
how
be.
to put yourself out of
and,
business.
and here's the
Yep.
reason why is that, first of all, there's rules in place now. So for instance, if you want to sell BLTs in a market and I'm already there with that
Mhm.
particular restaurant, the third party delivery companies will not allow you to also sell your BLTs out of that restaurant. You have to find another restaurant partner.
Ah,
Of course.
Now that was something new that got put into place. All right. The restaurants can't have the same food coming out of 3 different brands.
I see.
And that makes
Now-
sense for them as well because it gets confusing on, I assume, reimbursement rates or something, right? Payment
Well, I
rates.
think it's more of it's more of an issue of it's the same item being offered. You're just muddying up our platform with more stores and more things
Yeah.
to get caught up on.
It's
Okay.
kind of like the Pepsi versus Coke choice.
Yes.
think-
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I understand why they did that. I don't know if that's going to last forever because I don't know. Eventually, I think, regulators might come in and say, wait a second. So you won't allow this company to sell their food out of this restaurant, but you'll allow them to sell it out of the one across the street.
Yeah.
So you're restraining this restaurant from free market, but you're allowing the one across the street to be in the market. So I don't know what the rules are going to be because these are marketplaces and they are regulated.
Yeah.
Like Amazon is regulated to some degree, right?
Well, I would speculate that you have to be a certain size for the federal government to get involved, right? So you're talking like monopolies and such, or fair act or fair use.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could happen at some point. Because I mean, to tell somebody to say that one restaurant can't do this, but another restaurant can,
Mhm.
you start to get into some
Eh,
gray
I
area.
don't think I would be concerned about it until PE got involved and started creating $1 billion.
Well, yeah, that's
Yeah. Yeah,
Then
I'm
it
not,
becomes an issue.
I'm not worried about it. So
Yeah.
so that's a restraint from someone coming in to try to take the business away,
Sure.
right? The other thing is, the restaurant partners get to pick and choose who they want. So the relationships that we have are different than the relationships that someone else might have,
Mhm.
with that restaurant. Now, are there restaurants that are performing other brands, our competitors in their restaurant? Yes, but they're not competing brands. Now, from a standpoint of the restaurants aren't our competitors. The restaurants are our partners. The competitors are the other virtual brand companies that are selling food online. So that's where the marketplace and how you utilize the marketplace matters, right? As a company. So those marketplaces allow us to market. They allow us to do a lot of things that we can pay for to keep our brands at the top of the list. So just like Amazon, the marketplaces for DoorDash, Uber, and Grubhub, you want to be on page 1. You don't want to be on page 9. So it's a pay to play game.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Pay to be where you want to be, right? Well,
Mhm.
we have figured that out. The other part of it is, and they'll swear this doesn't happen if you ask DoorDash and Uber and Grubhub, but I can tell you there's no way they're not looking at this. They have a fixed cost of that driver to deliver that food, right?
Mhm.
They have a percentage that they receive of the value of the order as their revenue.
Mhm.
So, do you think they want to sell orders that are $32 or orders that are $18? So, you also position your brand to get a certain value out of every order because they're going to push you more. They're going to keep
Mhm.
you in a better spot.
Yeah, screw McDonald's. We want this guy. He's averaging 50 opposed to 20.
Exactly. Because that driver's costing $5 no matter what. So, how much
Mhm.
more money do we make on every order? So, if
Speaking
you
of,
look at DoorDash's numbers, they made a profit of $1, a gross profit of $1 an order that they delivered last year.
are McDonald's, speaking of McDonald's, are they or other big brands like that getting involved in this space as well or experimenting with it?
No,
They don't have the
you know,
ingredients,
there are some brands. So Denny's has a couple of virtual brands that they run.
but they have the ingredients, right? Whereas McDonald's does not.
Well,
They have very limited ingredients.
McDonald's bought Chipotle, so they can buy a company like this and just compete without their own brand being involved.
Yes, yeah, I would expect to see in the future as we grow as these virtual brand companies grow. I would think that a McDonald's or a US Foods might be interested in buying a company like this and getting into this
Yeah,
business.
it would make
US Foods,
sense.
from the standpoint they have the restaurant partners,
Yeah,
Right, right.
yeah,
And they
and they
can
could
force them to do it.
they could kind of bring it to them and say you're going to do this, right?
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
McDonald's, it would be more of a play of, okay, how do we become bigger in the virtual brand space? But again, virtual dining concepts, our competitor chose to go the enterprise route. So they chose to go find restaurant chains that could do
But
their product.
uh,
We chose to go independent owners, which takes
so
long.
I must be missing the concept because I don't see how McDonald's would work in this space because, again, limited ingredients. They're already a
Well,
recognizable household name.
it's the innovator's dilemma. The
Well,
reason why
the
they
way they would do it
fail.
is how Chili's did it. Okay. Chili's owns It's Just Wings. It's the
Okay.
biggest wing company in the country.
Okay.
All right. They do $1 million a day in sales. They make
Sure.
wings in Chili's. They never made wings in Chili's.
All
McDonald's
right.
can make their own brand that's people don't even need to know is McDonald's,
Right.
like to compete with Mr. Beast and use their infrastructure to deliver or to
Right.
make the food.
The problem is that people will find out that McDonald's is making this other burger,
Sure,
and they're going to put a value and a perception around it.
sure.
So sometimes it becomes hard. So there's a story out there from years ago that Chuck E. Cheese, they own a brand called Pasquale's Pizza,
Ah,
and they make it in Chuck E. Cheese restaurant, and that became a problem because they didn't tell anybody.
yeah,
So
yeah.
people were ordering and then finding out it came from Chuck E. Cheese, and it became this huge problem for
Well,
their brand.
McDonald's has other brands. They're big enough. Like they've owned Chipotle. I don't know if they still do, but they've owned Chipotle in the past. They own other brands that
Yeah,
can hide, more or less, and give off a higher value from a branding perspective than just McDonald's. But the reason why they would do it is precisely to combat the innovator's dilemma of the incumbents are not doing what the new players are only doing until it becomes impossible for them to compete in that space. And that's why Circuit City went out of business and why Amazon basically took over.
well, what we've seen, one of the things we've seen that's been a problem for the bigger companies that tried to come into this space is that they don't have restaurant owners or a relationship business. Unless you're going to be in the enterprise side of getting IHOP to make your brands, which some companies have done. IHOP's making some brands out of their kitchen. It's very difficult to not have those relationships and keep those restaurant partners because they need a certain type. They want somebody to talk to. They don't want to call up. They want to be able to send a text or make a phone call to somebody and they know it's going to get done. As opposed to the way most technology companies work, in that you're going to go into a queue, you might have to wait on hold for a while. We're going to spend an hour working on this. Restaurant owners are they're the best delegators in the world, I used to say, because there's so much going on in a restaurant that if you can't delegate to have somebody else do stuff, You'll be buried. It's called the black hole. You'll be stuck in that black hole the whole day, never get out.
Yeah. I could
So we
imagine
built
that.
our model to work within that for those
Interesting.
restrooms to make it simple for them.
Yeah.
And so, and just to give you an idea, the attrition rate in the business for a store to start with a brand and then decide they don't want to make that food anymore is about 60%, right? And that's due to the brand that's made not understanding how a restaurant operates and not understanding that you are a bolt-on, you are not the main business. So you
Right.
have to make things simple so that it doesn't interfere. We've lost 3 accounts in 3 years. And that's a testament to our system is set up to work.
Yeah.
We customize to some degree what it is. It's not just a drop in and say you have to make all this. We customize some things. About 90% of the menu stays and about 10% of it is customizable. So that if you don't have chorizo or you don't have an item, we take that item off the menu. We're not going to have somebody bring in a menu item that chorizo sells in Chicago, but in San Diego, maybe it doesn't. Or New York City, they don't even know what chorizo is. So you have to be flexible to some degree also within the model to make sure that the restaurants, and those are easy things to do, but it takes a little bit of time in the beginning. But
Yeah.
then when you figure it out, it's good.
Probably related. It's probably a function of you being a practitioner and not just a tech guy.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it because I can talk the restaurant owner's language.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
and
important.
those are the things they worry about. You know, restaurant owners worry about it. Is my staff going to be too busy? Can they handle it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We get past that. Okay, well, what about if it's an item that's not on the menu? Well, no, there won't be any items that are on the menu. You're going to get to be part of that process.
Yeah.
They also want to be part of the pricing process, right? Because we want to make sure it's profitable. Because if it's not profitable, why would you want to do it?
So they're truly partners. You should
Yeah.
have like a conference, a yearly conference for restaurants, and
Well, the problem is that restaurant owners can't get away from their restaurant.
you got to teach them, man. I think next is like a course, a restaurant owner academy or something.
Yeah.
We got a perfect person for it. Chris knows who. Kirk, do you do any like self-improvement? Do you read any books or anything you want to recommend to people, like things you do to improve yourself as a business person?
You know what? The main thing I do is I read a lot. I don't read a lot of books, but I read a lot of articles. I read a lot of information. And I'll impress upon anybody that's in business is that your numbers tell a story. Your P&L tells the story. Okay, that's your reality. You can go into your restaurant and think you're busy because you were there at a busy time. But until you look at your numbers, that's where you validate it all. Right? And to always use those numbers as your validation and the tweaks you can make, the simple things that you can do to change your business, and the profitability is amazing in the restaurant business.
What places do you get these articles? Like I imagine it's very insider baseball type of stuff, like restaurant industry publications and things.
Yeah,
like
a lot of
that.
restaurant industry publications, read a lot of those, but also just business 101 type of stuff. You know, everybody wants to reinvent the wheel, right? Everybody wants to come up with, guess what we sell? Basic food. You know what sells? Pancakes, French toast, bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches,
Grilled cheese.
grilled cheeses. Because we have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich brand.
That's dope.
Okay,
Making
we
me
do
hungry.
thousands of dollars a week in sales selling peanut butter and jelly sandwiches online.
Wow. People don't want to make that shit themselves?
Nope.
That's unbelievable.
But where do you go? If you wanted to go right now to buy a peanut butter and jelly sandwich
This
online,
generation's
where
cook.
would you go? Where would you go?
I would go to the grocery store, but I don't
Right.
know where
Exactly. You don't even know where you would go. So guess what? When
Exactly.
someone sees PB and jellies pop up online,
Wow.
they're like, oh, I got to try that. And guess what? The
Wow.
peanut butter and jelly French toast sandwich is amazing.
That's crazy, man.
And you're not
This
going to
is-
make that at home.
This is a brave new world.
So people
That's-
they
Or
like to have
not.
new options.
I think it is. It's more options. You know, I think it's freedom. You can go to the grocery store. No one's telling you not to. But if you didn't want to, you want to be lazy and spend $12 on one.
All right.
ahead.
So here's an interesting stat for you. So DoorDash did
Yeah.
a study. 35% of what you buy at the grocery store goes to waste.
That's true.
Okay. So if you pay more to buy something online and don't have any waste, you're even.
Yeah. Well, most people do both, though. Most
And
people just
but
do both.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But you buy a loaf of bread, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you eat the two ends of the bread most of the
Hell
time?
no.
Most people throw them away.
Not even the dogs eat it.
That's that's my point. So right away, you buy peppers and onions and stuff like that. You
Mm,
cut off 15% of it.
yeah,
If you eat it all, right? If
yeah.
you throw it in there and now it goes to waste, you throw it away. There's so much waste
You,
that
you
it
know
makes
that
sense to
this
order online.
reminds me of that well, the shirt Chris is wearing, conspiracy theories. So there was one a few years ago, you will own nothing and be happy. And I know that was taken, who knows, misconstrued. I know the people that made it said it for a reason, but Twitter ran with it. Let's just put it that way. But there's some benefit. I think it's maybe not a benefit, but it's the reality of the world we live in. Like you just said, why own a fridge really? Like if this stuff gets cheap enough, just order every meal. Why own a
Good.
fridge? Why own food? You could just order it all. Well, why own a car? People are already debating. Elon's new cyber cab, you see that?
Yep.
You can you can use a cyber cab for yourself. You can buy a fleet of them and be a taxi cab company
Mhm.
locally. I mean, why you need to own so much stuff? I get the other side, but we gotta
What?
push on
So wait,
the
what's
argument against it too.
because I'm vastly far on the other side. So
Why
what
own
is
a
the other
fridge?
side?
Let's go. Why own a fridge?
So you're not dependent upon others.
Right, but let's say
Well, yeah, that
that's a
is
big one.
good. That is a
That's a
great
big
point,
one.
Chris.
That's a big one. But let's say we could get over that. Let's say it's almost a perfect system
Uh,
where,
I would never be in that spot ever. Literally ever. There's no way you can convince me not to be
but I
where I'm
think
at.
we're inching closer to that. And maybe not in
So
our lifetimes, but at some point it will be.
so where I agree with you is I think there's a lot of people out there that just they for a number of reasons they don't have any concept or wish to do things for themselves, right? And this is
Lazy
where
people
that's
don't
me.
want to make peanut butter
Not just
jelly, man.
not just lazy. There's other reasons, right? But
Right.
uh, it could be busy. It could be any number of reasons. So that serves this need. But at the same
Yes,
time, I think you always need to understand there will come a time potentially when you need to rely on yourself.
for sure. For sure.
So
Well, I
do
know,
not
I
become too
know,
dependent.
Chris, I know that you and I are both going to survive no matter what. Dan, I'm not so sure of.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I definitely see the bull case for it. I'm more for not relying on those supply chains either. But at some point, we're all dependent on infrastructure. I mean, no one lives truly off the grid anywhere. As a society, we're
Have you not
pushing
seen
for
them
that.
van people channels? They're living off the grid.
They are, they actually, yeah, they are. Maybe that's the way we gotta go. Everybody just do that.
Well, I don't want to do that either, but
But then
happy medium,
these business models are also just inching us closer to that
certainly.
reality.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a great concept. I like what Kirk's doing. I think it's absolutely ingenious. But
Yeah.
uh, the more we move down this road, I
Mm.
think it will become problematic at some point.
I think the influencer market, like Mr. Beast just showed, I think you're gonna have micro influencers, like you're gonna have the peanut butter jelly guru, right? And then
Yeah,
Hmm.
she or he will dominate in that vertical, and then you'll have like the grilled cheese guru. And
Certainly.
I think that's
yeah.
more likely the future rather than we will own nothing and be happy.
I
But
don't know if you guys have kids, but my son lives with me, and he goes to Florida Gulf Coast University,
nice.
and I watch these kids because he's in a fraternity, and the guys come over all the time, and the girls come over, and they don't even watch TV anymore.
No.
I mean, they don't sit down and watch anything.
No.
Like
Yeah.
they are on their phones, and they are literally 30-second clip kits, I call them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
And they argue that's why subtitles are in now for that generation. It's because, well, for my generation and younger, millennials kind of started it, but younger, that extra 2 seconds of watching the scene play out versus just reading it quick gives you more time to multitask. So then when the scene changes, you look again. So you could like multitask, but you're missing like some of the art from actually sitting down and not doing anything and watching a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you guys both. We're living in this duality of things are headed this way, but we kind of know it's right feels better this way. And we got to be in the intersection and figure out a way to make money off of it too.
But one of the other things I noticed too is that while they don't do any of that stuff, they socialize a lot. I'm
Hmm.
watching them like going out, having social events,
Mm.
things like that. They like the sociability of being together, even if it's just hanging out at somebody's house.
Oh, that's absolutely without a doubt.
But
Which
that's
which
always been
and
younger
my
people
son
though.
was the COVID kid that didn't, couldn't go to high school for a year and a
Yeah,
half.
I think that's always been the younger generation though.
Mm,
Technology aside, like you just get less social the older you get because you like have responsibilities at that point and you're like, yeah,
well,
I don't have
I
time for this shit,
I
I
don't
gotta.
think I don't think that's true, and Kirk and I may be able to discuss this, but my son has like friends all over the country, right?
Yeah.
And literally they come to see him. Like we've housed people from Texas in my house. We've housed
Mhm.
people from Rhode Island. We've housed people from Boston. I mean, it's like, where are
Yeah.
these people coming from,
Same,
right?
same thing on my
And
side too.
and he has a
Roblox,
and he has a bazillion friends at school, right?
Yeah.
At his high school. It's not that he's the most popular kid in school, but my God, he has 10 times the friends I had when I was his age because I only had my friends in my direct social circle,
Right.
right?
They have such a bigger social circle
Yep.
overall.
but
And
are they more meaningful though, the relationships, or are they diluted?
Well, he
you know,
tells them, well, they're all idiots. I can hear him through the walls screaming at him on his Xbox.
well, yeah, and but it's interesting to see because I thought we were losing that sociability piece,
Oh,
and I'm watching it. I don't know if it just changes when they hit a certain age, to see how it's changed a lot. Like they're at college, they're all the way at school, they're all doing stuff.
yeah.
You're watching them grow up a little bit. They're not in
Yeah,
their
yeah,
walls that they grew up in anymore. So it's just interesting to see how they all interact together. Now, are they all on their phones all the time? Yes.
Hmm.
yeah.
But they'd rather all be on their phones at the same time while they're sitting next to each other,
Yeah.
which is a little strange. But at least they're socializing
Well,
together.
we're
Hmm.
not far from the cavemen gathering around the fire. Just, we have more
The fire being the
more
cell phone.
technology. Yeah, interesting. So, yeah, Gen Z has entered the workforce, and as a business owner, I could tell you that it's a interesting. It takes a different skill set to manage Gen
Well,
Zs.
well, Dan, here's one of the things too. So the Florida Gulf Coast has one of the best business entrepreneurial programs in the country. They have a whole major, they have a whole business school for entrepreneurial.
Hmm.
So a lot of these kids are in that program, and I'm telling you, they amaze me. I mean, the
Hmm.
ideas they have and what they're
Hmm.
learning and seeing what I mean, we're if this is what they're teaching, these kids come out, man, it's going to be an interesting world coming down the road with businesses.
Wow, you're impressed?
I'm impressed. I'm impressed by
Mhm.
how smart these kids are.
So then we got faith in humanity in the
I mean,
future, Chris.
they're so far past where I was at that age.
Wow.
And I
Wow.
don't know if it's just because they're exposed to so much more than we were because of the
Yeah.
internet and
Yeah.
online. But
Yeah.
it's very interesting. Some of them already have businesses. They have a business
Yeah.
on Amazon. They're selling clothes or they're doing that. Like it's
Wow.
pretty interesting to see. And it's kind of a subset of what I'm seeing because they're concentrated
Sure.
in a certain program, but it's very interesting.
Still though, yeah, that's actually refreshing to hear. Well, that's good. Chris, Kirk, any final questions, comments, or are you
No,
on social, Kirk, by any chance?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay, I gotta add you there.
And then we have a website, profitcookers.com.
That's a great name, by the way. I have to commend you on that one.
It was actually my partner came up with that name, and I was like, "Yeah, I really like it.
That's
It
a
caught
good
right on."
one.
And that's where people can reach us. They can read about anything they want to read about, and contact us there too.
awesome.
That's really
Well,
cool.
very much a pleasure, Kirk, and much more impressive interview than I was anticipating, to be honest.
Chris always
Uh,
says that though, Kirk.
I do. And only that I recall, maybe twice it was true, but usually I walk away, it's like, wow, that was way more interesting than I expected. So
Well, thank you. I'm
glad
glad it
glad
was.
glad we had you on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Likewise, any musical taste or what's your favorite music?
I'm kind of all over the place on that.
Hmm.
I like the Nashville scene. I kind of like
Hmm.
Western music, but it's new today. It's not like it was when I was a
More,
kid.
it's
It's
more
more
pop
mainstream.
rock today
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more pop rock is what it is.
with a
All right.
twinge of country.
But I also love the old 80s hair band stuff, you know.
Ah, that's
The
Chris.
Def Leppards and the Van Halens, like
Oh man, you guys are BFFs now.
I mean, that was what we grew up with. It was the best.
Glam rock.
No. Oh, see, he didn't mention glam rock. Neither of
Oh,
those groups were glam rock.
I
Hair
don't know the
bands,
difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
the hair bands, the Motley Crues and those guys. They were
But
good.
but and there will never be better music than past the 80s. You could argue 70s, I'll accept that. 60s, I'll accept, but it was the end. The 80s
Oh,
was the end. All downhill from there.
listen, we all had every shirt. We all had every rock band shirt there was, right?
That's absolutely, I still do.
That's great.
Well, thank you very much, Kirk. We really appreciate the interview. And Chris, thank you for hosting it again. Everybody
Absolutely.
like, subscribe, comment, share. Go connect with Kurt right now. Bye-bye.
Bye.